Okay, good evening. We have a special guest tonight. His name is Jay DeBoyer, and Jay is the state rep for St. Clair County and Northern Macomb County. Jay is working with Debbie and I to get some changes to the notary law. He has been working with us it's been almost a year now.
Yep.
And then, and is continuing to work with us going forward. We're trying to get some education. We're trying to get some changes to RONs so we can actually make some money on that. Debbie and I are going to do a deep dive into remote online notarization, help Jay understand what's all involved in that, because I think everybody agrees, the state says, yes, let's do it, but has no idea what's involved. And it's really involved, and to only be able to charge $10 per RON notarization means we're losing money doing that. So that's our next deep dive to do that. But Jay used to be the Register of Deeds. And
I
so
was actually a registered deeds, but it's also the county clerk. So your notary, you came to me, but
yeah,
also the register of deed issue kind of entangles with the issue we're talking about. So
right. So we've had a lot of issues with deeds being registered, whatever, notaries doing it wrong. And really that's what I want to talk about tonight. And when I saw Jay one day and I was like, can you maybe come and talk to our notaries about the issues that you have or had? Maybe you still have, but if you're not like direct, you still have a lot of knowledge on what we're doing wrong. Some horror stories, some examples of incorrect notarizations. And what we're really interested in is, what's the part that we don't see? Like when it gets rejected, how's it affecting our family? And so
yeah,
we want you to start out just telling us some stories. And then we have some questions for you. So tell us
sure.
some horror stories, okay?
So, I mean, I'll start with a couple, and as we talk, I'm sure more things are going to pop into my brain that we dealt with. So, and I'll share them as we move along here. But one of the largest ones that's an easy one to remember and an easy one to for everybody to relate to was during the housing crisis that occurred in 2008, 9, 10, 11. And there were multiple foreclosures that occurred and multiple bank failures. And so what ended up happening was there was notarizations occurring all over the country on property transfers that were going perhaps through a foreclosure with a bank, and they turned out to be completely fraudulent notarizations. There was an individual, and forgive me, I cannot remember the name that it was used. It was something green that was notarizing documents supposedly in multiple locations all over the country literally at the exact same time, or within hours or within minutes of each other. So we knew that clearly that was a fraudulent notarization. We had the FBI in our office. We had U.S. Marshals in our office doing investigations. We were providing documents for them. And what it was, from what I understood, is that it was basically banks trying to shortcut the system, believing that nobody would ever pay attention and nobody would look at it. So the problem that caused was that all of a sudden these transfers of property that legitimately perhaps were foreclosures, these transfers of property really got gummed up because it turns out all those documents were not executed legitimately. Now, as you all know, I believe, a notary essentially is just validating that the person that signed those documents is indeed the person that signed those documents. But when it's proven that it was fraudulent notarization, that takes you to the point of, well, was the person that signed those documents indeed the person that signed those documents? So that's one of the big ones that we dealt with as a county clerk, as a register of deeds, with the notarization problem. That is enough for me to say, wait a minute, we have to take a second look at the notarization process. Secondarily, one of the things that I always shared with the employees in the clerk's office and the registered deeds office was that, always follow the law, cross your T's, dot your I's, be certain that you do it right, because that way, if you ever end up on the witness stand and you have to raise your right hand and you have to say, oh yeah, absolutely, I looked at their identification, I knew that it was them indeed, when I notarize that. You don't even have to remember ever actually seeing that person, but if you do it the same way every time, and you do it according to the rules every time, you can with confidence and clear conscience sit on any witness stand and raise your hand and say that yes, indeed, you did notarize that document and that person was the person that signed that. So those are just two really quick ones. And we can continue to talk about this, but those are two quick examples of why notary is so important. And being the register of deeds with deed transfer, now I'm a state legislator and we're dealing with laws. What I found out is that there is no legislators that understand this at all. And, I was a county clerk, and just a sidebar, same thing is true with elections. There's no legislators that understand election law. And it's amazing to me that they're the people that pass these laws, but they really don't understand it. So I think what we're doing here, the discussions we're having, and the combination of property transfer, validation of deeds, because as you may or may not be aware, there's a large progression of deed fraud that is occurring in our country. It's happening in Michigan right now. I'm working on some bill packages for the prevention of deed fraud. And so I think that the notary issue and the deed fraud issue can go hand in hand. And I think it's going to get a lot of traction. And I appreciate all the work that everybody that's been involved has done to this point. And I don't know everything. Clearly, there is lots of things that I don't know. And I appreciate every bit of education that's getting thrown at me. I'll throw it back to you for a second if you would like to talk, and we can continue to ask questions. And
we can, absolutely. And I'm really glad.
Stories.
And I was talking to a real estate attorney who I was telling her how you are working with, I don't remember who, in Detroit about getting the deed to be a title search before they can be transferred. And she said, and you had said, or she had said, that it would be transfers that weren't between family. Right. And I don't know if you got the email that I sent to you, but it's the ones between family that she's dealing with. So we were talking like maybe this has to go something like the apostilles, where when it goes to the Secretary of State, they're checking to see that the notary is actually a notary, right, because they're using family to do it. And it's the same notary who's doing this fraudulently because they know there's no checks and balances. But wouldn't that be, I think that's a great idea to have that happen, to have the notary be checked on at the county clerk's office. Like, why can't they have that same system to have
well, I would say I agree with you. And I would say that, it's Sylvia Santana, who is the senator from Detroit, that we're working on. And we're in the process of, which I actually appreciate, we're in the process of talking lots of scenarios through. Because again, I don't believe that any of us know all there is to know. And so the idea of talking these scenarios through, like we're talking about right now, family members, right? So you're right. I could see a scenario that siblings, right, when a parent is perhaps passed away or incapacitated, I could see a scenario where siblings might behave in a manner that you wouldn't expect them to behave in a family transfer. I think a lot of that resides with the quit claim deed. The quit claim deed is a very, very simple process by which I can transfer property. But boy, oh boy, it really has no securities and it has no guarantees, like a warranty deed may. And even a warranty deed could be fraudulent or inappropriate or improper or not properly vetted as well. But the quit claim deed is the one that really is being used on the deed transfer or the deed fraud. And that is causing a lot of grief for a lot of people. Nobody is actually trying, although there are cases, I've had firsthand discussions with individuals who have actually, there's been attempts to physically lose their property with a quit claim deed. Most of those are done in an attempt to just steal equity from a bank, which I struggle with the idea that an individual who owns a home, perhaps free and clear, whether they be a senior, somebody who's been able to pay their home off, I struggle with the idea that we're requiring them to fight this fight when it's a bank who has lended the money fraudulently. Not that the bank was fraudulent, but they lended it fraudulent in a fraudulent episode to someone who's trying to steal it. But then we make the homeowner go through all the hoops to try to prove they're not responsible for that money. Something has to change there, and that's part of that discussion that Senator Santana and I are having, because that is wrong. Because as everyone probably on this call knows, that we're talking about thousands and thousands of dollars that you might spend in lawyers' fees to ultimately prove that you are the rightful owner of land or home that you are the rightful owner of. So to tie this back to the notary issue, that's where I think that the idea of deed transfer needs to be a more strict. I mean, I can't sell my car without going to the Secretary of State, right?
Yeah.
But yet I can sell, probably in most people's cases, my largest financial investment of my entire life with really no established guaranteed process.
Yeah.
So I think that this is a very big thing, and I would like to get it right. And the input from you guys, the input from lawyers who perhaps are estate lawyers, real estate lawyers, all of that is very important as we work through this, because I don't think that this is going to be a one-time simple, quick, easy solution. It's going to involve this notary modification, and we can go further into that if you would like to. Obviously, I think we should here. But the notary process modification, I do believe that the state should establish a notary, what's the right word? What am I looking for? A notary registry that is readily available and validatable.
Mm-hmm.
We do it with voter records. Your county clerk, your local clerk can validate whether you're a registered voter or not.
Mm-hmm.
There's no reason that we shouldn't be able to rapidly determine if you're a valid notary, or if a person that signed a document was a valid notary at the time. Those things are easily maintained in a database. The Great Seal maintains that database already.
Yeah.
There's no reason that shouldn't be shared with title companies, real estate agents, banks. All of those kinds of locations should have access to that. So I'm kind of on a little bit of a tangent there, but these are all the pieces that I think that tie together to make this a multi-package bill, potentially, to modify all these things. And at the end of the day, we all want similar things. We all want certainty in the execution of these documents.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And I thank you for taking this on. I know this was like totally foreign to you the first time we talked, but you were immediately interested in it and went, okay, somebody cares about this. Like,
yep.
I'm so glad you did that.
Thank you.
Debbie has a question, so I'm going to let her answer that question.
All right, so I have a comment first, then I have two questions. So in speaking about the notary database or registry, the Secretary of State does maintain our information, but there aren't any commission. We don't have commission numbers. So I think it would behoove them to give us a commission number, because if you got a John Smith, you could have 300 John Smiths in Michigan, and how do you know which one is the right one? So if you, hopefully that's in that. I know we put that in the request in the bill, but just stating that as a comment, because there's no way to know. You could have 5 John Smiths in, Ferndale on my block. There could be 5 persons.
That's right. Absolutely correct.
Absolutely need that. Then my first question is this deed fraud the same as title fraud or home title theft? Is it the same thing, or is it slightly different in a way? I don't know. So, and so the second question is, does title insurance help thwart this type of fraud?
So 2 fantastic questions. So the first one, deed theft, title fraud, I would say they're twin sisters. They are essentially essentially the same. However, you do have variations. You have people who are actually attempting to steal the asset, which is the property. But you also have people who are attempting to just steal the equity that's in the property. My most recent conversation with someone was an individual actually moved into a home, presented a quitclaim deed that was clearly fraudulent, but the person that the claim was that the person that signed the quitclaim deed was incapacitated. So that turned into a probate argument that did this person indeed sign this quitclaim deed to this person who is now living in a home, who was not a family member, or did this person realize that this person who is incapacitated was ripe for the picking, create the quitclaim deed, chase down a signature, fraudulently create the document, executed the document, filed it at the Register of Deeds office, and therefore believing that now they're established as the rightful owner of that property. By the way, an important fact, and some of you probably know this, all of you may know this, just because a document is filed at the Register of Deeds office does not make it a legitimate document. The Register of Deeds office is nothing more than a glorified file cabinet. That's really all it is. There's statutory requirements that have to be applied to every document that's filed, but there is no validation of that document because it was filed at the Register of Deeds office. That's a misconception that some people have. Some people believe that because a document was filed at the Register of Deeds office and it has that seal on it from the Register of Deeds office, that it now has become a valid document, that there's some vetting process that's done by the Register of Deeds office to validate that document. That is absolutely false. Now, with that being said, I may get blown up by the Register of Deeds on this, but we might end up there. We may end up in a spot that we say that a document that's filed at the Register of Deeds office has been deemed to be valid. That's a little bit scary, but boy, oh boy, I'm trying to find a solution that we can help people without it costing them. So that's the fraud is perpetrated that they steal the actual asset. The other type is that they just want a paper trail to demonstrate that they are the rightful owner. So when they go to Huntington Bank and take out a $100,000 equity loan, that the cash gets released to them. They never actually go to the property. They don't have any desire to possess the property. They don't want anything to do with the property. They just want to grab the equity. Those are kind of the two ways that your property is stolen. One, it's actually stolen. The other way, it's stolen financially, because if you can't prove otherwise, there's a chance that the bank is going to come and take it from you. And that's generally how a lot of people find out that this has been perpetrated. The bank shows up and puts a posting on their house that they're in default, and they go, "Wait a minute, I'm in default. I don't know anybody anything on this house." Well, then they start doing their homework and they find out that there's been a mortgage taken out, a promissory note signed, and they're like, "That's not me. That isn't me. I didn't do that." But then they're burdened with the time and the expense of proving that it wasn't them. That's where I'm a free market guy, but that's where I start to get frustrated, because the person that was had was the bank, not the homeowner. They are a victim.
Yeah.
Right. So why are we making the victim do all the work when it was the bank? Now, to go to your second question on the title insurance. Yeah, I would argue that what's the purpose of title insurance if they don't make the bank whole, right? And they don't always in these cases, because what they do is they claim that they did their homework and their information is only as good as the documents that were available to them when they did their title research. So that's their wiggle room. And I have fantastic relationships with title companies through my own property transactions, but as well as when I was the Register of Deeds. But boy, oh boy, if I'm buying insurance there better be some value to that. And I think it's a misconception to a lot of people that title insurance protects them against fraud. And it does in some cases of fraud, but not in all cases of fraud. Secondarily, there's these other companies out there now that are selling this product, which is title fraud or deed fraud or equity fraud insurance. And you pay this monthly fee, and really all this is a life lock for your property or your deed. It's really not, it's no guarantee. They don't give you a cash value if it's stolen from you. All they do is alert you if there's activity on your deed, which again, to me, is an after the fact. The crime's already been committed. Your equity may have already been stolen. Your asset may have already been stolen. You're still on the hook to prove otherwise. This company doesn't really do anything to help you with that. They don't pay for the lawyer to go to court to defend you or protect you or prove otherwise, but yet they take your fee on a monthly basis. So I'm not saying they're nefarious, but I think we have to be very clear about what it is they're offering. And so that's another piece in this legislation, right? And again, I'm a free market guy. I'm not a big government regulator guy, but I'm watching something happen in the Register of Deeds office that is really causing a lot of grief for a lot of people. And frankly, it's causing a lot of grief for people who probably are a little less able to do it. It's happening to seniors a lot. Mm-hmm. Because, you know, as probability would have it, they perhaps have a home that's paid off and it's free and clear. So they don't, an equity thief is not going to steal equity in a home that's got a lien against it already, because there may not be a lot of equity to steal. They're going to steal equity from a home that has lots of equity in it, right? Because they want that loan to be an easy loan. They want the bank to look at it and go, oh, yeah, that home's worth $500,000. You're only asking for 100,000. That's easy, boy. We can do this. No doc here, sign here. Let's go, move along, right? Oh, okay. And this is the big problem that as we've talked about this notary issue, and I've been brought into that deeper than I ever had been. And I lived in that Register of Deeds, and now as a legislature, these are all kind of coalescing together, and it's a bigger a globe than I had originally anticipated. But I think it's good that we're tying all these things together, because I think we can make it a bipartisan thing. I don't think Republican or Democrat is going to care. This is not political. This is about protecting the citizens of our state. So Absolutely. Sorry, again, long-winded there, but
you are a politician. We do expect long-winded. Okay, so rapid fire questions for you. Mm-hmm. So if you've seen notarizations that were improper and they got rejected, what was rejected? What was it that the notary had done that made it reject?
The multiple commissions, the county in which they notarize, the county in which they are a notary. Those are probably the typical errors, formatting errors. Those are probably the typical errors that you see.
Okay. All right. So to make it clear for those who are new here, or those who might be a little bit uneasy about notarizing, because we have people that have been notarizing for a long time, and people who are new to notarizing, and people who are afraid to notarize, but they've had their commission for a while. So we're going to make clear here that when it says at the beginning of the notarial block, it says state of Michigan, county of, it's where your feet are planted, correct? County of, my feet are in Macomb County, it's county of Macomb, which should match what you put on your stamp. Acting in the county of is Macomb. So the acting in the county of and the state of Michigan county of are the same county, correct?
Yes. If you're acting in a county that you're not the notary in.
So maybe I'm commissioned in Wayne County,
right?
But my feet are planted in Macomb County. It needs to say Macomb County in both of those places.
So you correct me if I'm misspeaking this, but the way I understand it is you're commissioned in a county.
Yep.
And you can act in a county.
You can act in a whole different county.
I'm commissioned. When I was in a notary, which I am not now, but when I was commissioned in St. Clair, but I could be acting in Macomb, Wayne, Oakland, Sanilac in my circular.
You can do the whole state.
Yes.
You can act in wherever you are, as long as your
Yep.
feet are in Michigan, you can notarize. You just have
Yes.
to know what county you're in. So you're
Correct.
acting in that county,
Yep.
which is also at the beginning of the notarial block, it says state of Michigan, county of where your feet are planted.
Right.
Okay.
Yep.
Second
Yeah,
thing
your
on
stamp is going to probably, you may have a stamp that is a standard stamp that says Commission, St. Clair Commission in St. Clair County.
Yeah.
Right.
So it
But
already
it's-
tells where you're commissioned, but it also has to tell where you're acting.
Where you're acting, where you're actually doing the notarization.
Yep.
Yes.
So, the second thing that I know that people put wrong is, it says on this day in the notarial block, it says on this day, so you have to put today's date. You can only date it for the day that you're signing it, that you're
Correct.
notarizing. It can be, the document can be dated, whatever. You're notarizing it
Correct.
to this date. So you put this date. So today it would be August 2nd or 2 August 2023. Before me stood, and you would put the name of the signer.
Yep.
As their name is stated in the document.
Right.
Which may or may not match the way it is on their driver's license.
That's correct.
But it has to match the way it is in the document.
And you have to be, I'm paraphrasing here from the statute, and you have to be certain that the individual, as they've presented their ID, is a representation of the name that is addressed in the document. And here's just, it's just irony, because as the county clerk, I was involved with elections. The same applies with ballots. The same applies with your voting registration. You can sign, my dad could sign Jim DeBoyer, right? That's legitimate.
Yeah.
Although his name was James DeBoyer, and it's because we all understand that that's legitimate. It's kind of one of the things. But if it says Sally Smith and the ID says Betty Boop, right? No, hold on, wait a minute here. Those two are not interchangeable, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
So like the junior could be there or not there.
It could be there or not. Junior is actually one of the toughest ones.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, junior is not necessarily part of a person's name.
Right.
So,
it may not be on their driver's license, or it may be on their driver's license. It may be on their driver's license, but not on a birth certificate. It's really, junior is one of the difficult ones.
It is. It is, because junior is only part of your name if it's on your birth certificate that way.
Right. That's correct.
My dad started using senior after my brother was born. And when my brother got his first license, he added junior because he has the exact same name. But when my dad passed, my brother stopped using junior. There was no reason to separate it anymore. So he doesn't have that on there anymore. So it's a little bit different. But like first initial last name, if that document said L. Hocker on it, that could be anybody named with the first initial L. So you can't necessarily know that that's me. So you have to be careful on that. But that's where that goes there. So I was at the Macomb County Clerk's office one day waiting to talk to Tony. And there was a gentleman who walked in with a quitclaim deed that his father had signed, and he was going to file it. But the notary had written her own name in where it said before me. And the man started crying because it was rejected, because his dad was no longer in the right state of mind to be able to sign it again. Now, the notary could correct that. However, they can't give legal advice at the county clerk's office. So all she could say was, this is rejected. And all he could do was say, but why? And she just kept saying, I can't tell you why. I can just say I can't accept it. And he's crying, and she was upset. And I can't give legal advice. It wasn't my business anyway. But I was just like noticing what was happening. And that poor man, she finally said, the notary filled out the notarial block wrong. Her name doesn't go here. And he's like, I don't know what to do. And it was a very, very sad situation. He could go back to that notary and hopefully she could figure out what she did wrong. But he was sad because his dad couldn't sign it again. So that's one scenario that I know of, how it affects the family when you screw things up.
So I would, if I can just add in that, one of the things that's important for notaries to realize, which I would say most of them do, but some of them don't, is that all you're doing is validating that the person that signed it is indeed the person that presented their identification to you. Because there are some notaries that get nervous about documents and they read through documents and they try to validate them. And then they get nervous that, well, I don't know if that's true. That is not a notary's job.
Say that again. Say that again.
That is not a notary's job. The truth is, and I'm being, sometimes absurdity proves a point. You can notarize a blank sheet of paper, right?
It has a signature on it.
If it says Jay DeBoyer type and I sign it and I show you my ID, you can notarize it. It does not change or strengthen the validity of that document. You're doing one exercise, and that is saying that that signature was signed by the guy who is that guy. That's it. It ends right there. So the notaries that get nervous about notarizing certain documents, and I don't know if they're good or bad, or that they're actually way beyond their role. They should stop having anxiety about that. And they should just go, did he give me his identification? Did I look at the picture? Is that him? Did he sign it in front of me? Yes, he did. I can notarize that. I don't care if it is a fraudulent document. I'm protected. I'm legit. I'm legal. I'm good. I did what I'm supposed to do and walk away. No notary in the history of man has been charged criminally for notarizing a fraudulent document if they notarize the signature of the person that indeed signed it. There you go.
I'm going to take that, Debbie.
That's our soundbite. That's our soundbite right there.
This is it. We have been preaching this for 2.5 years. We notarize signatures, not documents. Stop reading the documents. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
It's not your concern. I have people who literally will not speak to me because they think I'm doing a disservice to their customers because I won't read the document. And I said the document is no.
Absolutely not.
Debbie, if you can, when you do this, I want you to clip that, and that's going to be like pinned to the top of our page.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. And that wasn't planned. I just want you all to know I did not plan that at all. Thank you so much, Jay, for that. I appreciate it. Debbie has a question. Can you even follow that?
Right, I can't follow that. But I do have a suggestion because you did mention elections. And I sent this suggestion to the Jocelyn Benson's office. Yep. But I'll just pass it along to you. When they're doing elections and they are struggling for poll workers, people to work, there are 130,000 notaries in the state of Michigan. Call us.
That's a great idea.
That know how to ID people. Utilize your resources. Could you please pass that up the chain? Because I think
great idea.
Solve a lot of
all these old people credit. That you have at the polls.
I want
credit. Absolutely.
Yeah, instead of getting all these retirees who have nothing else to do, use these notaries, mobile notaries especially. We'll take a day off. I take a day off for elections every year. As a matter of fact, election day is on my birthday this year, and I'm taking the day off so I can work the polls.
Very nice.
Yes. All right. Next question. Does ink color of the stamp matter?
Ooh, I don't believe that the statute addresses it. You might tell me otherwise, but I will say this. I will say this. Because remember, I was a clerk, the county clerk. Right. Blue and black is the legal color that's addressed in statute when it comes to legal documents. Blue and black. Blue and black. And so even if I can't quote you statute on this specific, but I can say to you, if you wanted my advice, I would say, yeah, your choice is blue or black.
Okay. Thank you.
That's where I would end it.
I had a former notary tell me that he always used red. And that now this was a very tiny jurisdiction that he worked in, and he worked for a certain place. But he said that the clerk always knew it was his because it was red. And when he switched to black, she thought it was fraud because he switched colors.
That's purely anecdotal, right? That's not, I don't know that the statute addresses colors, and it perhaps may, but I would say that you won't go wrong if you stick with blue or black, because at the end of the day, here's what judges used to say to us. And I'll give you a real world example.
Please.
So we had an employee in the clerk's office who we have the ability as the clerk to enter default judgments if people don't comply, or if they just are silent, or if they don't participate.
Okay.
If they miss a deadline, we can enter default judgments. So we had one of my deputy clerks that was using this pink sparkly ink on a pen, right? And the judge said, I'm sending these documents back down to you. We are going to do these documents again, because these documents theoretically live into perpetuity, right? And we want them professional looking. So that was the argument that I always took to heart when it came to blue or black, was the judge's argument that he threw back at me after one of my deputies used a sparkly pink or fuchsia colored pen. I'm like, I understand, Judge. So we're going to stay blue or black is what we stayed with. So,
and I had a notary reach out to me and ask if it was okay. Do we have any leeway on the stamp? Can we use for the border, make it like guns, or make it snakes or something? And my response was, your job is a very professional job.
Right. Yes.
That stamp is not where you show your style. If
Nope.
you want to take your stamp and put like a sticker on it and show your style there, or if you want to have a notary journal that has your photo of your family on it,
Sure.
or put your thing, this is a professional. You're not like tattooing yourself. This is somebody's
correct.
document.
And I'm going to just add to that. And this is, I'll full disclosure, somewhat my opinion. But I think it matters. So one of the things that I used to express to individuals in my office that were notaries is the idea, again, sometimes absurdity or worst case really paints a picture, is the idea that you actually could end up on a witness stand, right? So imagine if you were notarizing a document that, because of the imagery that you use in your border, clearly paints a bias that exists in you about a topic, and you are now in a case that involves a bias one way or another on that topic. Do you realize what you've just done to potentially, depending on which side you were actually on, do you realize what you just did when you just handed the defense attorney that, or vice versa, the plaintiff's attorney that? You just handed them something that they can now put into the minds of a juror to create doubt. And by the way, we're more likely to be on a witness stand in a civil case than we are a criminal case. We may be there in a criminal case, but more times than not, you would be there in a civil case. So now in a civil case, it's preponderance of evidence. It's not reasonable doubt. It's a lesser standard. So now I just handed to that plaintiff's attorney something that they might be able to point to prove that I was biased, and there's a probability that I may have actually fraudulently notarized that to a jury. Why would you want to demonstrate that publicly to people?
I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's silly.
Soundbite number 2 for tonight. And also, notaries need to keep in mind what they post in these Facebook groups for that very same reason. Because if you get called in and they go to look at your social media and you got all kind of whack stuff out there, they can use that against you as well.
That's the point. You are a professional, act like one, right?
So
if you want to do,
people
go ahead.
with their Facebook pages, and they have their Facebook name as eye candy.
Don't out somebody, but something
like it sounds like they're a stripper.
Sure.
And then they're saying they're a notary.
Right.
Or they name their business, their notary business, something that's suggestive.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to get one kind of business.
Right.
What are you looking for, I guess, is what it is. So that's, I'm like, be professional.
Well, it's the old adage, you reap what you sow. And at the end of the day, my father always used to say to me, hey, you can do whatever you want as long as you're prepared for the consequences that come with it. Right. So
Yeah,
do whatever you want. That's fine. I'm not going to tell you can't, but boy, oh boy, understand what the consequences may be that come with that action,
Right.
right? So,
Right. Oh my gosh. Okay, let's address stamps that are upside down.
Hmm.
If I accidentally stamp upside down, can that be accepted, or should I put the X through it, initial, and restamp right side up?
so I would say that it's probably not a disqualifier.
Okay.
However, I keep going back to my clerk world because we had these kind of scenarios occur.
Yeah.
Let me give you one piece that just tags right to what you just said.
Okay.
Never, ever, ever use whiteout.
Right. Right.
Never, ever use whiteout. If you believe that you should, in some way, what would be the right word? Discredit that stamp. Put an X through it and put your initials next to it. That way we can see what you were Xing out and redo it. That, to me, is the right way to do that. You put whiteout on a document and you're asking for trouble. That was a court documents. That is an absolute no-no. Whiteout on a court document. The whole document basically gets thrown out because you've just invalidated the document. We don't know when that whiteout hit it. Did it hit it before the judge signed it? Did it hit it after the judge signed it? Right?
Good point. Good point.
So
speaking of court documents, it is far too often that I have to go sit in court at someone's home with them while they do a Zoom court thing. This thing since COVID, I thought would lift up, but it hasn't happened. And there's no room on that court document to stamp. But what they have you fill in is not complete for a notarization. So I have to stamp it somewhere. And the first time I had to do this, I explained to the judge that there's literally nowhere on here for me to stamp. Can I add a loose certificate? And she said, absolutely not. Find a place. I don't care where it's at, she said. Find a place. So I found a place. I had to kind of stamp over my notarial block, which that's how I found out that it's okay. That while we cannot stamp over anything in the document, our notarial block is not part of the document.
Right.
It is our notarial block. And if we have to cover part of that notarial block with our stamp, it's okay. The state law says, wait, it's right there, that the illegibility of a notarial block does not deem it invalid. True, false, what is it on your end?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me because so court documents have very, very specific standards by which they're supposed to be structured. Now, judges are rather lenient about that. They're supposed to have a minimum of a 1-inch border, right? Which by the way, somebody's got their mic up, which by the way, that would allow for you to get a stamp in and a notarization in a 1-inch border. And I'm guessing that perhaps that wasn't the case in your example. Yeah, illegibility doesn't necessarily disqualify the notarization.
Okay. Yeah,
I would agree with that. Yes.
It does. That actually says that in the law. Yep. So here's my thing. And I'm advocating for education and
absolutely
the class. So when you become a notary, the only thing they say to do is to read the law. So Debbie and I have done a deep dive into the law, and we've done this a couple times now. And I've done training and education my whole life. So I know that you can read all the things, all the rules, all the how-tos you want, but until you have something to apply it to, you don't really understand what that really means. So that's another reason why I think education is really important. Because I had read that illegibility of the notarial block doesn't deem it invalid. But I just thought if it was somebody who was writing sloppy and you couldn't read the name. But then I found out that it's if you stamp over part of that notarial block, it's still okay. because you have to do that. So then we get to the embosser thing. So now, does placement of the the raised seal make a difference as long as it's near your name? Can you emboss over part of your stamp? Can you emboss over part of your name? Tell us about that.
Yeah, it doesn't make it invalid.
Okay.
I always go back to the clerk's job that I had, the role that I had as a clerk, because it's what a clerk does actually. Although I actually did validate documents as a clerk, it's similar to the validation of a signature, right? So I always embossed over my signature, right? I did, because what it did is it kind of created a scenario that said, there's no way that somebody forged this because Jay signed it first, then embossed over it. There was no alter. That's just was my own little thing in my brain, right?
Okay, sure.
Because that way that there's no way you're ever going to alter that signature with that embossed seal over top of it, right?
Yeah.
So it was in my.
Oh, we lost you. You really were having Wi-Fi issues. Hold on. One moment. Oh, that's so sad that's where he got stuck.
He's frozen.
Yeah. Jay, come back. Turn your camera off and turn it back on, because we got you stuck on this. Not cute.
Freeze frame.
Off spotlight.
Oh, man.
Remove spotlight. We'll take him off the spotlight for now.
Yeah.
He will probably get bumped off and come back. So we'll just wait. I see that he went dark here. Come on, Jay, come back. Can you pause the recording until he comes back? Oh, he's gone. Oh, he's waiting. Here he's back now. Okay, good. Okay.
Back. Yeah. So my statute, you got me now?
Yeah.
Yep.
So statute doesn't from everything that I have read, statute doesn't spell that out. If there's more to that, Leslie, that I'm unaware of, please share that. But that was the process I would use. I use it as the clerk a lot. I would sign and I would emboss over my signature.
Okay.
If there's more to that though, and there's a reason why you think that there might be a reason to not, I would love to hear that, because it's not something that I have running through me.
I actually like that idea a lot. Because sometimes there's no room to emboss. I mean, okay, so retirement papers, they're really specific. You need to put your stamp here and emboss over here, and everybody's signing in the middle of it, and it's great. I love that.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of places like the financial power of attorney. So the law says that every state will accept notarizations from other states, and that, interstate financial powers of attorney are fine. We have a lot of snowbirds. So there's a lot of, people who go back and forth, and they're using the power of attorney in the banks. It has happened recently that I do a lot of estate plan closings, that banks in Florida are not accepting our powers of attorney if they're not embossed. And so the attorneys that I work for have just adopted that every power of attorney is going to get embossed. And then they adopted that every paper, every notarization in the estate plan also gets embossed, which I had asked you, can you over notarize by putting an embosser on, like embossing a deed? And you were like, not really. Like, you just made
not really
face
yeah.
when I asked you that. So I just started doing that. But like, what documents actually have to be embossed?
That I can't even tell you the answer, but I will tell you this. And this is, so I'm trying to use a little bit of deduction here. So we have there's a federal code that says that there's an acronym for it. It's the Uniform Electronic Documents Act. Okay. That might not be dead accurate. So, and what that says is a couple of things that you may know to be true. So the first one is, anything that I deem to be my signature is my signature, right? Literally an X. If I deem that to be my signature, it's my signature. So to go to what your question is though, even the banks that any agency that requires that, I don't know I don't know that they can require it, although they do require it, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And we comply. And you
Exactly.
should comply because it makes everybody's life easier.
Exactly.
But under that acceptance of digital documents, how would I emboss?
Right.
Right? I can emboss. And,
Right.
and again, I step into my other world, which is in the engineering world. Digital documents now are coming, right?
Yeah.
They're coming at us rapidly. And none of the engineering sealed documents that I deal with in my other world are ever even, most of them are never even printed, right? But they're a protected embossment, right? Which is actually a printing of an embossment. So
Right.
the only reason I'm bringing those topics up is that that's what we're headed to in our society.
Yeah.
So the idea that the requirement of an embossment, I don't believe there's anything in statute that says it must, right? Now, I would argue that it does not hurt at all. And it's actually, to me, it's a protection. There actually are a few states, however, I would say, that do real hard raised seals they require on some legal things.
Yeah.
But that's a state by state issue.
Sure.
I've never had that raised in Michigan
Right.
to be a necessity.
Yeah. And it really
So-
wasn't the state of Florida that is doing it. It's certain banks that are in Florida that people are using.
Well,
Um,
correct. And there are certain counties in Florida that require, even on the engineering side of things, and it's
Yeah.
just, these are all kind of related a little bit. They're requiring,
But just
some
kidding.
counties require it, some counties do not. So,
Yeah. So I just want to clarify one thing because Vicky asked in the chat, when is it used with the ink stamp? You can never emboss instead of ink stamp. It's always
Correct.
ink stamp and embosser or ink stamp alone, but never embosser alone. But question for you regarding the gold seals that people want to put on the paperwork before they emboss. Necessary, not necessary, just makes you look a little extra. How's that work?
not necessary by law. Depending on what the document is.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might do it to give it a pretty look, right? For the lack of a better word. Um, to give it what?
Opinions don't count here, Debbie.
Zhuzh it up. No, it's zhuzh
That's
it
right.
up to make it cosmetically.
Yes, absolutely. Because the truth is you might be notarizing documents that are, gonna get hung on a wall, right? They might frame them. They could be all these things.
Right.
And so at the clerk, I go back to being a clerk, right? At the clerk's office, we did that on some documents when people would make a request for certain things. Sometimes it was historical documents. Maybe it was a birth certificate of their great grandfather, and they wanted
No, we
this.
can't notarize those, right?
No, I'm just talking about seal, right?
Oh,
And
okay.
so it's depending on if someone asks you to do it and you have the means to do it, by all means do it.
Sure.
Does not make it better or worse. Doesn't change it at all.
Got it.
At the
Okay.
end of the day, the stamp in your signature is really
That's what matters.
what does it.
And
Yeah.
the stamp isn't even required. Let's talk about that real quick.
Should
The
be a
stamp
block
is not required, but all the elements that are on your stamp are required.
or
and
required.
There are people who want a stamp of their own signature because they don't like writing it all out. So why would you choose to write it all out instead of stamp it? And there are places that will not accept your notarization without the actual stamp and your signature. So just get the stamp. It's like $25. It's a very small investment in your career. So get
The stamp for you is your easiest route. Now there may be notarization blocks, but I'm going to tell you, and I think you would probably caution the same way, Leslie. Make sure that notarization block has all the information in it that it's supposed to have, because a lot of times it doesn't. And I'm going to tell you, even court documents that are drafted by the state court administrator's office that they're supposed to be the smartest legal people in the world, which we all know they're not, but they're supposed to be, sometimes wouldn't have it appropriate on it, right?
Right.
And you go, that's wrong.
Well, and
So-
sometimes they do have all that, but they still want the stamp along with it.
Absolutely.
So like a lot of these estate plans that I do, they put all my information there. They still want me to stamp it and sign it, which I am 100% on board with doing. It just kind of solidifies that it's really real. So
Perfectly fine to overdo. Yes.
yeah. So
She just
we are
raised her hand. Did
Oh,
you have
who
a
did?
question, Marcy?
I did.
Oh, Marcy, go ahead.
I wanted, before we moved on from the embosser,
Okay.
sometimes I look around the document and I'll find a nice spot and I'll think I'm just gonna emboss up there and I just squeeze it up there. It's not near my stamp, but I feel like I don't want to stick it somewhere where I'm crimping the parts of the document. But now I guess I could do it in my notarial block. I didn't know that.
Yay, we learned something.
But it
new tonight.
doesn't hurt anything if I stick it anywhere on there just to have it on there.
Nope.
Okay,
Nope.
thank you.
I mean, technically, you're only supposed to alter the part notarial block and down, not up there. So,
Okay.
okay.
Time check, we're at 8:03.
Yeah, we're at 8:03. I just have a question. I sent you an email the other day. Phil answered it for you, but he's going to talk to you about it. Can we
Okay.
talk about digital IDs?
Oof,
So,
yeah.
Do you think Michigan is going to go that route to allow us to like have our IDs like on our phones? And then if we do, is that going to be an approved like can a notary accept that as ID?
Well, I'll give you my opinion first. My
Okay.
opinion is inevitably, and first I'll say I don't have any real life, meaning in my job, I don't have any reason to believe this is going to occur, but I'm just giving you, the playing field right now of the trends that we're heading towards. My answer is yes, we're going to end up there.
Okay.
With digital IDs. I'll tell you that I don't like them, and I'm not because I'm a big conspiratorialist, but I have a relatively good understanding of cyber world, and I'm going to tell you right now, there is nothing that you can do in the cyber world. I don't care who tells you that they can protect you, they're lying to you. It can be hacked and it can be modified, right? So nothing better than the good old fashioned hard copy. Now, with that being said, go talk to some college students and they'll tell you about the Michigan ID that they bought that says they're old enough to go to the bar, right? So with that being said, there's fraud everywhere, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but I do think the trend is going to take us to that at some point. Now, I don't know that will be done away with as a hard copy also. I think it could be both. Yeah. You'll have a hard copy, but you also have a digital version that you can share. Yeah. On the notary side, is it possible that the digital ID could be used? I would say it's possible, but it would require a statutory revision to a degree, I think. I don't think we can just assume by jumping over to that digital ID that it's what the intent of the law was. That's all. Okay. I think we would need that change.
So prior to this meeting, Debbie and I were looking up digital ID, and I did find that there are, 9 states that do allow digital IDs, but they aren't acceptable in place of their ID for notarizations at this time. So what they said was you still have to carry your ID, but like if the cop stops you, you can just pull out your phone. Or if you're in a store and you need to prove who you are to go with a driver's license or a credit card, you can show that as ID, but not acceptable as notarizations at this time. And I agree with you. I think that can be hacked too with the this new artificial intelligence stuff. There's so much that can be it's scary what's coming up. I mean, I used it for something to do with notary, and I was like, tell me blah, blah, blah about notary. And it came up with stuff that's not even close to true. And I was like, it just makes stuff up. Like this, this is really bad. So I would be afraid of digital IDs. But the subject came up because the other night, one of our notaries went to do a notarization, and the guy didn't have his ID, but he had a picture of it. And he's like, yeah, this is the picture of my ID. And so the notary texted me and he goes, can I take this? And I'm like, no, you have to hold his ID in your hand. And so the guy did go home and get it, but he didn't understand, like, why couldn't we just accept that? And I was like,
Well, you got to remember that the burden the burden will be back on you if something goes sideways, right?
Right.
Are you going to be able to sit in court, raise your right hand and say, no, I actually saw his physical ID? No, you're not going to. Well, you may say that you did, but you'll be lying, right? And
Yeah.
what are you doing as a notary if you're a liar, right? So let's not even go there, right? Let's do it the right way.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. All right. Let's open up for about 5 minutes to see if anybody has any questions. And if you have a question, either use the little emoji thing and raise your hand, or raise your hand and I'll call on you so that we don't have everybody talking at the same time. Does anybody have any questions for Jay before we move on, before we close for the night? Looks like a no. Gosh, we're so thorough, Jay. It's amazing.
We covered everything there.
We did.
Sorry. I had a question, but I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand and I couldn't figure it out.
All right, you're good, Celine. Just keep talking.
Okay, sorry. Hi, Jay. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you. My question is, I'm going back to the very beginning of what you were talking about the deed fraud and all that. So I have a question on that. So my question is, how do consumers or homeowners, that is, how are they able to check that no one has taken like their equity or stolen their home or something like that? What are ways that they can, look into that?
So one of the simplest ways, and maybe I say it's simple because of my experience, but so your register of deeds office, if there's liens against your home, your register of deeds office, those liens are going to be on file. When I was the register of deeds, I had a very simple policy, which was if a homeowner comes in and would like to see a copy of their deed, because we were actually a digital warehouse where we stored our deeds digitally. We had hard copies, but we stored them digitally. If someone comes in and wants to see their deeds, we would provide them that. We wouldn't charge them for that. And if they had additional questions, is there a lien? What's the most recent activity? Most register of deeds office software allows you to, even if they don't let you do it physically, they will do it for you. It allows you to do a search on your parcel, and it gives you a chronological order of document actions or document filings. So what, in layman's terms, what that will allow you to do is it just allow you to look at the clock of a timeline to tell you what's the last document that's been filed on your property. And if the last document that's been filed on your property was your warranty deed or your quitclaim deed when you took possession, then you know that nothing's occurred since then. That's a simple way to know if there's been anything filed on your property. Now, that is easy for me to say because I lived in that world for so long and I understood it. One of the things, so I still have a very good relationship with the clerk register of deeds in St. Clair County. She actually had been my chief deputy. I also have a very good relationship with the chief deputy, who is essentially runs the register of deeds office. And we've had these conversations as I've moved forward. One of the things, they're implementing a new software in St. Clair County, which will allow you to sign up with an email address. You have to validate who you are. So it may not be, excuse me, I have a tickle. It will, it'll allow you to sign up. You have to validate who you are before you can sign up. Prove indeed that you are the person that owns that land. But then you can sign up with an email address that if documents hit a specific parcel ID number, then an email would get sent to you. That doesn't cost anything. It's an automatic trigger, right? It's an automatic trigger within the software. So that's a piece of what I think, and I've said it early on this, I'm not a big government guy, but I do think we have some very definitive roles. And this is one of them. And so that software will allow you to sign up, put an email address, identified to that parcel number, and if a document hits that parcel number, you get an email address, an email, almost literally instantaneously. So
St. Clair County is so far ahead on that, though. Like, I can literally type in somebody's last name, the street number, the street, and find out everything about that property. I can just like that. Macomb County, I can't, to save my soul. It's
Yeah, I don't know
really-
Macomb County's management software at all. I was the register of deeds, the county clerk for 12 years. And when I came into that office, I actually filled a vacancy because there was a individual retired midterm. Then I had to run for that office subsequently. But when they brought me in, circuit court judges make that appointment when there's a vacancy. And the one thing they said to me is, we want you to bring this office into the 21st century, and we want you to use technology to better service the customers and the citizens. And so that's what I did. That was my main focus there.
Well, thank you for that.
And as I was going out to become a state representative, this investment into the new software we had rolling out, and Bruce, who's the chief deputy at the Register of Deeds office, he's as good as anybody with that stuff. And so, it's a model that I think would be easily taken to other counties that would be beneficial to the citizens.
I think they should teach all the counties that. It would make our life easier. But that being said, do we have any other questions before we go? We are running a little bit late tonight, but if you have a question, it was great. Thank you, Terry. I agree.